so you've taken these classes. They talk about the patriarchy theory. Is that correct?
Yes, they do talk about patriarchy.
And so, given your experience in these classes, what's your sense of, like, can you define what that is? What is the patriarchy? What is the patriarchy theory?
Okay, so the patriarchy is essentially the idea that women are inferior to men, and it's a set of notions, ideas, institutions that sustain this belief. But I will say, too, these classes don't demonize men. I think that's a very common misconception.
Well, I have to follow up with you on that, though. So you said that also this applied feminism thing, it'll look at like Marxism, for example.
I use that as another example of how applied theory works. I did not use Marxism in my class.
No, that's not really what I'm getting at. But so my understanding with Marxism, it's sort of it looks at things from a lens of oppressor oppressed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And my understanding of feminism, and you mentioned patriarchy theory, isn't that precisely what patriarchy theory is? That women are oppressed and men are the oppressors.
I think it's a little more complex than that. I think it's the idea that, so patriarchy isn't women being oppressed. Patriarchy is the idea that men are superior to women. And it's the ideas. Yes, it leads to the oppression of women. But patriarchy itself is not the oppression of women. Patriarchy can take many different forms. It's not always in the sole oppression of women.
Okay, but so are women oppressed under a patriarchy?
Yes.
Okay, and who, if women as a group are oppressed, there must be another group that is oppressing the women, which is who?
It's oftentimes men, but the way that I have learned about it personally, and this is my understanding of it, I don't think it's your understanding. I think that...
Are you going to say internalized misogyny, that women have internalized misogyny from the patriarchy?
Let's let her finish. Go
I
ahead.
would really like to not be interrupted while talking about this.
I know you wouldn't, but I just wanted to predict it, that's all.
You can hold your predictions until the end. I appreciate it.
Go ahead.
Well, then it wouldn't be a prediction if I held it till the end.
Are you done?
I am.
Thank you. Essentially, patriarchy is a system of punishments and rewards. Women oppress other women in these instances. That is what toxic femininity is. Anyone can benefit off a system of patriarchy. Women will make little tiny digs at other women, and they'll gain slight respect of other men. It comes in many different forms. Like, for example, like a woman just talking badly about like classic feminine traits, like, oh, that's so girly, oh, I hate wearing makeup, like I would never do that, like women who wear makeup are insecure, all these things. When women say those things, it gains them some sort of social capital under a system of patriarchy. Anyone can benefit from a system of patriarchy, but it functions off the idea that men are superior to women.
So internalized misogyny.
Not necessarily, because
if women are oppressing other women under a patriarchal system and they're doing it in order to score points with whoever's in charge of the patriarchy, that would be considered internalized misogyny, right?
That's one example of it, but the internalized misogyny is just one aspect of patriarchy. That's not the entire
Now, I
idea.
didn't say that was the entire aspect of patriarchy. I said in the specific example of women oppressing other women through the means of patriarchy in order to score points with the patriarchy, that's internalized misogyny, right?
Yes, I would say by definition. Do you want to add in?
No.
So then my prediction was correct. That's why I wanted to get it on record.
Okay.
So I have a couple follow-up questions on this. So, I mean, you mentioned that women can oftentimes say negative things about other women. I think that's perhaps getting a little bit away from my questioning here, though, because we're talking about patriarchy. I'm not totally sure how that ties in unless you have an explanation. But
Okay. Yeah, I do have an explanation.
Okay, I have some more questions for you afterwards, but go ahead.
Okay, so as I've said before, patriarchy isn't just men oppressing women, it's the idea. Women can still hold patriarchal ideas, even as women. Society functions under patriarchal ideals. These things are taught to us since we're young. They're taught to us in many different forms. They're taught to us in different behaviors, school, just different societal norms. Like, yes.
You gotta talk in the mic if you're gonna.
You gotta
speak.
have domestic roles, and like you're gonna be I don't know, things like that along that line.
Yes.
So-
those putting, like, assigning gender roles at a very young age, like, oh, women are always expected to cook and clean, women are expected to give childbear, like, all of these things function under a system of patriarchy. And when these behaviors are repeated over time and time again, it sustains this idea. Like, all of these different actions and behaviors and institutions that these ideals are ingrained into, that's what sustains the idea over time. Now,
Wait, so you mentioned an objection to this view that women should be moms or have children. Isn't there a biological basis, though?
yes, I think
For
that,
that?
obviously, yes, I'm not denying that, but I think that women should be given the choice of whether they want to be a mom
Sure.
or not.
Nobody should be compelled
Yes,
to.
and I think that, but a lot of times in society, like, as a girl, it's assumed by a lot of people that I want to have children. People don't say, oh, would you like to be a mom? They assume that I am going to become a mom one day. That is assumed that that's my natural role as I get older.
Can you say the same thing for men?
I don't think so in the same way. I think that it's definitely there. It's definitely present. Like, there is still that expectation, but
Like
take
marriage.
for example, like, two stereotypes, right? You have, like, a woman in her 40s who doesn't have children versus a man in his 40s who doesn't have children. When you think of the woman in her 40s, you're like, oh, she's lonely, she's a spinster, she has no purpose, like, she doesn't have a family, like, she can't possibly have, like, that inner joy within her life. Think of a man in his 40s, oh, he'll settle down at some point, he's a bachelor, he's just enjoying his life, like, all of these things.
Do you think there's a biological basis for this?
I think at some point, just because of due to, like, the reproductive system, yes. But I do think that a large component is societal.
Yeah, well, I think that that's all bullshit. So here's a good example of why it's bullshit. It ignores ontology, and you know what ontology is. You were taught that in your feminist studies course, right?
No, I don't know what that is. Could you please
No,
elaborate?
you weren't taught ontology in your feminist study course. They don't ever teach ontology. So
I'm just being
the study of
honest.
being, meaning that there's a difference between men and women. They're not interchangeable widgets as much as feminists would like to pretend that we are. We each have a separate ontological nature. Our very nature in being is different. This is why these stereotypes exist. They exist because the actual root in which is a man and what is a woman are totally different from one another.
Right, but
And so when you take these loaded terms like patriarchy, what's ignored by feminists is nature. Not nature as in the natural world, but rather the nature of what the thing actually is. Men and women are not the same thing.
I never said they
Period.
were.
And
Okay.
so because of that, we have a different telos, a different purpose. And this is why when people think about purpose and they say, oh, the 40-year-old spinster, this is not something which is socially pressured as much as it is a way for us to understand the nature of women is to make children. This must be the case because there's no other way they can be made. And so, of course, we would see that women who defy their own nature are going to be more miserable than not. Anything which devolves away from its own purpose tends to not be very happy.
Do you think that as a woman, my only purpose is to have children?
I think it's your ultimate telos.
You think that the most fulfilling, joyful experience I could ever have in my life is to have children,
As opposed to.
Yes.
as opposed to anything
So many
else?
other
Wait, can I? So let me
So
ask
here,
you.
hang on. Let me finish real quick, Brian.
Okay. I'll go after you.
Let me give you the straight
No,
answer.
I want to hear what you have to say.
Yes. And why?
Okay.
Why would I think that? Well, because all of the evidence, which I have and you have, would indicate that that is true. A, can men have children?
No.
No. Who
Okay.
can?
women.
And the primary edict from an evolutionary standpoint is reproduction, is it
Yeah.
not?
Well, yeah, of course. Nobody's denying that.
So then if the primary edict is reproduction, only women can have children, then it seems that the nature and purpose for women ultimately is to be the ones who have children. Otherwise, we go extinct, right? That wouldn't make a lot of sense.
Right.
So yes, of course, I would tie generally the purpose of the thing to the thing.
Yeah. Okay. You're finished, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that is all absolutely true. There's nothing I can disagree about that. But why the need for, like, zero effort in wanting progress, like wanting more than that. That is
Why? What can be more? What? I don't understand how you can deliver more progress to society than replication. For instance, rocks and non-biological things cannot replicate. You can actually replicate your genetics. You can do that.
Yeah, that's a miracle.
Solely biological beings only can do this.
Yeah, that's a miracle, and that's
what
great.
What could ever be a higher purpose than that for a woman? I would actually like to know that. What would be a higher purpose for a woman than replication?
I personally, if I were to have a child right now, I would not be like, this is the end of it. I'm the happiest I've ever been, and this is the happiest I'm ever going to be.
How do you know?
This is amazing. I know because purpose isn't just like being a mom. There's plenty of other things that fulfill me. No, I'm not.
Then how the fuck would you know?
Because there's plenty of other things that
what are you talking about?
I'm talking about the things that have given me purpose, that have fulfilled me and kept me alive and happy and not still wanting to have to be a mom prematurely, because that's my purpose.
So let me ask you very directly,
or I'm never going to be able to.
Let me just ask you very directly. What could you ever do in your life that would be more important than replicating your genes?
I mean,
oh my God!
Honestly, if we're going to go into that territory, then like there's plenty of other things.
Then there's what?
Helping other children that don't have parents, maybe.
You mean
I don't
whose genes
have to
have already been
replicate my
replicated?
own genes to do that. That comes from like a really selfish.
So somebody else has been able to replicate their genes, but not you.
No, but you know, like if there's 5 children that don't have parents, they have nothing, and then I'm over here wanting to replicate myself in that like selfish state of mind.
Why would that be
selfish? I have
selfish?
the choice of doing it. It's a bit selfish because you can help this child that is gonna die without your.
I want to bring it back.
Why can't you help the child and replicate?
The resources are gonna have to be.
Andrew, I'm gonna get things back on track a little bit.
Wait, what? Wait. I don't even understand the argument.
It's off the rails.
So you don't replicate because there's children out there who are in need?
Yeah, you don't have to replicate in order to have that feeling of motherhood.
Somebody has to replicate.
If you're talking about purpose.
Wait, somebody has to replicate for those children to exist.
There's plenty of people replicating all over the fucking world right now. So
somebody
that's a
had
valid
to replicate,
point.
Right?
Yes, but that.
So if that's the case, then still you would still be fulfilling your ultimate purpose, which would be to take care of what is replicated.
Hold on.
Same thing.
You were going to say, where do I begin? Go ahead.
Yes. There's a lot of other things that I am excited to that I think are my purpose besides childbirth. And personally, speaking from the perspective as a woman, you are not a biological woman. There is a list of things that I am more excited to do than give birth to children at the moment. I'm more excited.
Wait a second. Are you saying that there's a distinction between people who self-identify as women and biological women?
No, I'm saying that you're not a biological woman.
Well, then I can have the same exact lived experience you do.
Do you identify as a woman?
It wouldn't matter, would it? All that matters is that I could have the same exact lived experience as you if you make no distinction between the self-ID and the biological. And if you don't, and you said you don't, then you can't say you're not a biological woman, so therefore X.
Can I please finish?
Yeah, but you can finish after you clarify how it is that you can tell me what my lived experience is when you make no distinction between the biological and whatever my self-ID may be.
You know what? I am sorry for assuming your self-ID. That was wrong on my part.
So I can have the same exact lived experience as a biological woman, right?
Do you think you have the lived experience?
That's not my question. What's my question? I could have the same exact experience as a biological woman under your worldview, correct?
You're arguing that...
Are you going to answer my question?
I am answering your question, and I need you to stop interrupting me.
Yeah, okay, so yes or no, could I have the same experience as a biological woman without being a biological woman under your worldview? Yes or no?
If you would let me finish, you would know that I have...
Do you know how to say the word yes, and do you know how to say the word no? That way I know what your position is. Don't obfuscate, don't bullshit me, just say yes or no. And if it's no, then you can qualify, and if it's yes, you can qualify.
Can I please speak? I would like to speak my answer without being interrupted.
Go ahead.
Here is my perspective. You are arguing, right, that as a biological woman, due to my hormones, my purpose, the greatest, most fulfilling thing in my life is having children, right? And multiplying.
You're not answering my question.
I'm clarifying your point before I do.
You just asked me a question. You just asked me a question. You didn't answer my question, so I'm going to ask you again. Under your worldview, can I have, by self-identifying as a woman, the same exact experience that you have as a biological woman or not?
I think it's more complex than that. Is it okay for
me to
You got to
speak into the mic or I can't hear you.
I think it's personally more complex than that, and I quite honestly don't have a yes or no answer, and I think it's more subjective on a case-to-case basis.
Right.
And
So
I'm
you
sorry
don't.
if that answer-
So you don't know.
No,
So you don't even
if
know if
that
there's a
answer doesn't
distinction between
satisfy
someone
you,
who's a
that's
biological
okay.
woman and someone who just self-IDs. How can you use the fact that you're a biological woman as an argument then?
I have tried to explain my point, and I have tried to explain to you that I do not think that this is a yes or no question. I think that it is simply on a case-to-case basis. It's not black and white. I think it's a little more complex than that. And it's okay if that answer
The
doesn't
concept
satisfy
is
you.
too complex for my feeble mind to comprehend that you can't
that's
say
not what I'm
yes
saying.
or no to a direct question. Now, I'd like to demonstrate for you the distinction between the two of us. You can go ahead and ask me the same exact question, and I will say yes or I will say no, and then give my qualifier. Because either one's true or it's not true.
Can I please continue?
You were done. It was my turn to speak.
I have
What do you
something
mean?
else to say.
I have some questions too. I could ask a couple.
Yeah, if you want to be
I could
brought
throw a
back
couple.
into
I could
convo,
throw a
yeah.
couple questions out there.
Are you gonna?
Oh yeah. I thought Andrew had more. You got more, Andrew? What you got?
I mean, I do. I would like to actually go through this because I don't understand how you make the argument, you're not a biological woman, therefore blank. Because by your worldview, if I just self-ID'd as being the thing, and then claimed I had the same experience that a biological woman has, even if I claimed that it's the overly masculine experience that I'm used to, you could have no argument against that unless you are making the distinction between a biological woman and a self-ID'd woman. Are you making the distinction between the two?
Andrew, what I was going to say is that I do not think this concept is too complex for you to understand. That's not what I'm getting at here. I think that this topic in itself is so complex that I personally, me speaking like truly, do not have a yes or no answer. I'm not saying that I don't have an answer for you. I just don't have an answer. I solely don't.
Well, I can't. We're not gonna get bogged.
So assume for a second. Let me just make sure I got this right, and then sure, I'll turn it over to Brian for whatever he wants. I just want to make sure I got this right. You are unsure whether or not, based on just self-ID, I could or could not have the same experiences as a biological woman. I just want to make sure that we got that on record.
It's not that I'm unsure. I think it's more dependent on a case-to-case basis. That's all I'm saying. And I'm not saying that the topic is too complex for you to understand. I think you fully understand it. That's not what I'm getting at here. I'm not trying to invalidate your opinion. I'm not.
Well, we can't stay bogged down on this for
I
too
agree.
long. So I have a couple questions I'd like to ask. So when Andrew was talking about, this being perhaps the ultimate thing that a woman could do in her life, and you said, well, I have plenty of things. I don't know specifically what you said. You said there's plenty of things that I can begin.
I can clarify for you. I remember what I said. I said there are plenty of things that I'm more looking forward to than childbirth and reproducing and multiplying my own genes right now. I can personally think of many
what are some
things.
of those? Yeah.
Okay, I want to live abroad right now, so I'm more forward at my current place in life right now. I am more looking forward to living abroad, going to grad school, graduating from grad school, meeting a future partner, doing all of these things. And I have another question to pose. If someone were unable to have biological children, right? would you still argue that her greatest purpose in life is to reproduce? Would you still argue that?
Well, I wasn't really making the argument, but she's incapable of reproducing, so if she can't reproduce, she can't reproduce, so she could go off and find something else. But I guess my question to you is, one, you could do all of those things and also have children, but I guess what I often hear is when it comes to there are better things than having children, it's typically in pursuit of a career.
I think that is a common argument. I think that it honestly is subjective. I myself personally have never had the desire to have children, if I'm being fully honest.
Sure, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I guess, do you think...
I'm not saying that some women's purpose isn't to be moms. I think that's totally fine. I know some people who enjoy motherhood. It's the thing that they're meant to do. And I'm not trying to invalidate that. I think that women should just simply have the choice if that is what they want to do or not.
Right.
I don't think we're making the argument that they shouldn't have the choice. I think the argument we're trying to make, it is probably the most selfless and most altruistic and most impactful thing they could do upon the world is reproduce, have children, be a mother.
Here's another counter thing. Say I didn't have children biologically. I adopted.
Yeah.
And I saved kids from like an instance where they're refugees, they don't have the proper resources, they don't have social provisions given to them, and I give them a life in a developed nation and I provide them all the loving care that a biological mother possibly could. Would you argue that that's still just as altruistic and selfless?
It would be noble of you.
Sure, but somebody else had to do the replicating. So the thing is, somebody still had to replicate and fulfill their highest purpose in order for you to then fulfill your highest purpose.
Yes, I'm not denying that a woman has to bear children, but okay. Anyways.
Wait, so okay, look, I'll just kind of get to the point here. So do you think working for some nameless corporation and being a worker drone is generally more fulfilling than having children?
I think that for some women, if they find a career that they are extremely passionate about, yes, it could. Is that purposely?
Do you think most women have careers they're passionate about?
I think that I wish they did. I think it's really hard to find something that you're that passionate about and be able to turn it into a living. I would argue that that's not my purpose in life. I don't think that is a lot of people's purpose in life. But like how you said earlier, like...
What do you want to do for work?
What do I want to do for work? I want to be a lawyer.
A lawyer. Okay, what kind of law?
I want to go into employment law, and I want to deal with like workers' comp cases.
Okay, and do you think that, you know, when you're on your deathbed and you're looking back, do you think that you'll think, you know, in comparison, if you had children, do you think it would be more fond memories of having children around you, or when you're in your old age, if you have children, grandchildren, do you think that would be kind of more desirable than like looking back on the fond memories of that employment lawsuit that you just scorched? You killed it.
Well,
If it was for a better
obviously
cause.
not, but I think it's a very broad assumption to assume that I won't be surrounded with children in a different sense. Like my little brother wants to have children. I'm looking forward to being an aunt. I love kids. I do. I work as a nanny. I work with a 3-year-old and an 8-year-old right now. I want to volunteer as a teacher abroad for a few years. It's not that I don't love children. I think that they're amazing. I love being able to see things through the perspective of someone who's seeing it with fresh eyes. I think it's such an amazing thing. I'm not denying that. And I would love to like be an aunt. I would love to volunteer with children in the future. I personally just don't think being a mother is for me personally.
All right,
Okay,
so hold on. So, okay, I think one of the criticisms of feminism is I don't think most people actually have any objections to, look, if a given women, you know, if they don't want to have children or they'd rather pursue a career over starting a family, I don't think anyone really cares. I think one of the criticisms of feminism is its actual attack on women who do choose to have families and who want to, for example, go have kids, be a mom, be a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
They think that that's some sort of form of oppression.
Oh, I don't think it is. I think it's solely, and I've said this term so many times, I think it's a case-to-case basis.
Well, sure. Anyways, I'm going to move it on.